It certainly wasn't a great showing on my part as far as my results at UFC Fight Night 104, but overall there were certainly some high points. I picked both the Korean Zombie and Felice Herrig to pick up upsets. We did see 6 fights end via upset overall, and including the last 5 fights of the card. I also told you not to bet on OSP, and if anything, you were going to invest in that fight. It should have been on Volkan Ozdemir. My lock of the night came through as well. Tisha Torres defeat Beck Rawlings by decision, which was going off at about minus 140, depending on what book you were working with. But I had 2 devastating losses, both Anthony Hamilton and Michinori Tanaka, both coming up short, certainly hurt. We won some cash, but we basically broke even, fell a little bit short of breaking even with the big bankroll bundle. My big reward bundle certainly did not have a good night. Either way, first tough one of 2017. The first 2 shows I did were fantastic, well above average. So we'll hopefully keep things going. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we're breaking the upcoming UFC Fight Night 208 event, which will take place on February 11th from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. It will feature the crowning of the first ever women's featherweight champion as Holly Holm, former bantamweight champion, takes on Germain de Randamie. Anderson Silva also on the card, along with Jacare Souza, Glover Teixeira, a trifecta of Brazilian superstars. And I'll be giving you all 5 of my predictions for those fights on the main card. All 7 of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Additionally, on my website, my bet packs, which I talked about in the intro, also available on my website. $15. I break down every single fight on the card, giving you both betting and fantasy analysis. I give you DraftKings lineups. I give you parlays. I give you props. I rank all of my picks. I have several betting scenarios that I've been tracking for a couple of years now. All the stats are posted there. I tell you which ones you should back, which ones maybe you should fade or just stay away from altogether. I give you as much information as I possibly can. And it's $15, one-time commitment. If you want to save a little cash, you can subscribe. I believe there's only 2 events left in February. Last time I checked, let me just... Yes, there's 2 events left in February, so you'll be able to get a discount. You can pick those 2 events up probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $20, $25. Save yourself a few dollars if that is what you were interested in. On that note, bet the public pick section, and you can vote on who you think is going to win each fight. See who the public's backing. That's always interesting. Now, on that note, let's head to my first prediction of the evening. The first fight of the night takes place in the UFC's lightweight division. Is the number 10 ranked Dustin the Diamond Poirier, 20 wins and 5 losses, takes on longtime UFC fighter and former top contender Jim Miller of New Jersey, 29 wins, 8 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, Miller is coming into this matchup having won 3 fights in a row and getting himself back on the lightweight map. But this win obviously would push him back into the top 15. He did have a questionable split decision against Joe Lozon, and he had a win over a lethargic Thiago Alves, who was cutting down to 155 pounds for the first time. Now, for Dustin Poirier, he has had won 4 fights in a row prior to getting knocked out. He moved back to 155, went on a winning streak, then got knocked out by Michael Johnson in just 95 seconds. Johnson then went on to get TKO by Khabib Nurmagomedov, so you see kind of the train of progression there. Dustin Poirier, 6 years younger than Miller. He'll be 1 inch taller and have a 1 inch reach advantage as well. Now for Jimmy, he's coming off a couple of odd statistical performances. He was outlanded by Thiago Alves in that matchup, 36-28, but he landed 4 takedowns to make up the difference and was the busier fighter for the most part. Against Lozon, he outlanded Lozon 80-54, but he gave up 3 takedowns, and for my money, I thought he lost the matchup. I had Lozon in that fight, and I thought Miller just didn't do enough. But, hey, that's the way things go. For Dustin Poirier, he has a big statistical advantage in offensive output. He averages 2.17 strikes per minute more than what Jim Miller is able to hit his opponent. Now, Miller does get hit 0.82 times less per minute, but again, those numbers still favor Poirier in those exchanges. Looking at Dustin first, he has a lot of pop in his hands. He gets good extension on his punches, relatively long strikes, and he keeps a very decent active pace, likes to work in his opponent's face and remain there. He mixes in some very hard kicks as well, and he can do a lot of damage taking away the speed and just the base of his opponent. With Dustin, though, his chin is a bit of a question mark. He struggled with the speed of Michael Johnson overall, and he does tend to overextend or really open himself up when looking to create offense, and that's what Johnson was able to capitalize on, and that's what ultimately was his undoing. When he fought Joseph Duffy actually rocked him in that fight at one point, and Dustin Poirier did a fantastic job of switching gears to his wrestling and took control of that fight on the basis of his ability to take Duffy down and grind him out in the mat. It was a very impressive strategical change that he did in that fight. Now, looking at Miller, he isn't the type of fighter that you want to mess with on the mat. Let's get that straight right off the bat. He is a BJJ black belt. He has tapped out several very talented grapplers. And that's a place that if you go there, you are certainly at risk. Now, that being said, Joe Lauzon had a lot of success from top position, and we have seen fighters have some success against Miller once they get on top. Jim Miller tends to be a little bit over-aggressive on the ground. He goes for submissions. If he hits them, boom, it's lights out. Usually attacking a limb, he will submit you. But he does have a tendency to dive on submissions, not get them, and then give up that positional edge, and he spends too much time on his back in trouble. And if he can't get the submission, his opponent's going to gain a positional advantage that could lead to victory. On the feet, Miller's a pretty decent striker. He certainly made strides in the last couple of years. But against Lauzon, it was his power. His power was a big factor there. He was landing some significant strikes and putting some pop on Lauzon, and that was kind of giving the better the edge. I believe, like you said, he outworked him. But still, I thought Lauzon was having a lot of success in that fight nonetheless. Dustin's chin isn't perfect. And as I said, Jim Miller is incredibly dangerous on the mat. Those are two avenues. If Miller doesn't have a lot of big knockout numbers, but if he catches Poirier, he could put him down. It could lead to a submission, or he could knock him out. So certainly Dustin Poirier is not ironclad as far as his ability to walk through this fight. But the way I look at it overall is Poirier, there are different points in their career. Dustin is simply too quick. He's too active with his pace and volume. He will outwork Miller, and that'll lead to a slowdown from the older fighter. And, when the fight hits the second half, look for Poirier. If it does hit the second half, look for Poirier to pull away. I think ultimately Dustin Poirier is going to land something big. He's going to hurt Jim Miller, who's traditionally very tough to put away. Only Donald Cerrone has been able to do it. But I think Poirier is going to back him off. You know what? To be honest with you, I could see this ending by TKO or KO, but I think Miller's tough enough to hang in there, and my prediction is Dustin Poirier to defeat Jim Miller by decision. Fight number 2 on the main card is a matchup that's certainly flying under the radar, but it's very interesting. This is definitely must-see television. The number 3 ranked former title challenger Glover Teixeira, 25-5-0, takes on the 15th ranked Jared the Killer Gorilla Cannonier with a record of 9 wins and 1 defeat. Teixeira is coming off a brutal knockout loss to Rumble Johnson, which is pretty much par for the course unless you're like Daniel Cormier. There are some questions there. It was just an unbelievably soul-crushing, soul-stealing knockout. Is that going to have physical implications on his capabilities? Is that going to have mental implications on what he's able to do and how he's able to fight in this fight? For Cannonier, he made a successful 205-pound debut in his last matchup. He has won back-to-back fights, but he's taking a massive step up in competition. Let's keep that in mind. And ultimately, what kind of got him this fight, I would say, is the end of that fight with Yon Cutelaba, where Cannonier was simply walking him down and letting him hit him, and just his hands were down, and he was saying, hit me, hit me, hit me, and really, some of the strikes he was avoiding, but it was very crazy, and it won a lot of fans, created a lot of hype, and as a result, he's an incredibly high-profile fight here, and the light heavyweight division certainly needs these type of fights and performances from unknowns who are looking to make their name. Cannonier's 5 years younger than Glover. He'll have a 1-inch reach advantage, but he gives up 3 inches of height. Now, when you look at the Killer Gorilla here, he has a very big right hand. That's what he used to KO Cyril Asker. He throws a nice left jab as well, and he'll counter with his right. He's pretty quick overall. He has good kicks. He'll throw a very hard body kick. He shows very good leg dexterity for a fairly big man. He'll switch stances. He has power and strikes in close, and he'll throw some big uppercuts if he gets you on the inside and can let those go. I said he moves very well for a big man. He's exceptionally quick, good footwork and head movement overall, and I like the way he'll attack, and he'll slip off his head off the angle, so he's not exactly where you think he is when you're going to try and counter. But that being said, when you go back to the opening stages of that fight against Cutelaba, Ion won that opening round fairly handily. He was pushing the pace against Cannonier, backing him up, landing a lot of shots, landing multiple takedowns, and while Cannonier was getting back to his feet, Cutelaba was carrying a type of pace that ultimately he couldn't continue for the entire fight, but it really put pressure on Cannonier and forced him to fight defensively, and he was really struggling with that. He ultimately didn't have success in that fight until Cutelaba started to slow down, started making mistakes, started backing up, and didn't have the gas tank to continue moving forward. Now, for Glover Teixeira, he has a pretty decent offensive wrestling and submission game. He landed 5 takedowns on an upset pick I predicted over OSP, and he had similar success against Rampage Jackson a couple of years back. Once he gets on top, he has heavy ground and pound. He broke St. Preux down with that top position striking. He'll move to mount, look for that ground and pound eventually to open up submission opportunities. He likes that top position triangle choke. He'll also go for a rear naked choke if the position presents itself. Now, he has had issues overall with fighters that look for takedowns. Phil Davis and John Jones combined for 12 takedowns overall, and even Patrick Cummins in a relatively short fight put him on his back 4 times. Again, he's not easy to hold down. That's for certain. He's not easy to hold down. Phil Davis had a lot of trouble keeping him on the mat. until that fight kind of progressed into the second half. On the feet, Glover is incredibly aggressive. He throws good combinations. He works in close. He's kind of a pocket puncher. He will kick, but not a lot of his offense comes from his lower half. It's primarily his hands. He doesn't wind up with his massive power strikes, which I really like. He'll throw in some uppercuts. Despite the fact he doesn't wind up, he still has good pop. He keeps in close, and overall he's a very effective striker. I think he's going to find success in this matchup when he closes the gap and forces his opponent to fight with their back off the cage. We saw him do that against Rashad Evans. I'm assuming he's going to do something similar here against Jared Cannonier, because we saw Cutelaba putting Cannonier on the defensive, and that was the difference in that fight. There are still some questions about his chin, especially as the aforementioned Rebel Johnson fight. Can he rebound from that type of loss? He is getting older. Is that something that's going to, really stunt his ability to be aggressive and be in your face? But I think Glover's going to be smart here. We saw him smart against OSP. I think he's going to be smart here. I think he's going to use his wrestling early on to take Cannonier off his game, score some multiple opportunities, multiple takedowns, and set up some top position strikes, do some damage where Cannonier is completely rendered useless as far as his offense is concerned. That short-range combination striking for Teixeira when he is on the feet will show up big. I think his pace and cardio will hold up fine over 3 rounds, and Cannonier is not going to benefit from that slowdown that he experienced in his last fight. Teixeira won't be intimidated, I don't think, the way Cutelaba was kind of backing up and under, a combination of being intimidated and tired, simply put, tired. I've thrown everything I can at this guy. He's still coming forward. What do? Glover's not like that. Glover will keep attacking, and he will stick with that wrestling, and he has the gas tank to do it over a prolonged period of time. I think Glover eventually hurts him, and my prediction is Glover Teixeira to defeat Jared Cannonier by TKO. Moving right along, we are in the UFC's middleweight division for the first of 2 main card middleweight fights. As the number 3 ranked fighter in the division, Ronaldo Jacare Souza, 23 wins, 4 losses, and 1 no contest, battles the 13th ranked Tim the Barbarian Boetsch with a current record of 20 wins and 10 defeats. Now, Souza is coming off a UFC 198 TKO victory over former champion Vitor Belfort. He is 9-1 over his last 10 matchups, with his sole defeat coming via controversial split decision to Yoel Romero, an upset that I did correctly pick. And he probably gets a shot at the title with a win here, I would think, with Romero and Bisping lined up. I can't imagine they won't line Jacare up with the winner of that match. For Boetsch, he has won back-to-back fights, both by knockout over the late, rest in peace, Josh Saman and Rafael Natal. Prior to this current 2-fight streak he's on, he suffered through a 2-6 slump that involved a couple of controversial victories. Souza, 1 inch taller, of a 2-inch reach advantage for Boetsch, though, and he is the younger man by 2 years. Now, Jacare is a BJJ black belt. 16 of his 23 wins have come by submission. He is coming up, as I said, a TKO of Vitor Belfort that was largely secured with his top position game, takedowns and ground and pound. Overall, he averages 3.48 takedowns per fight at a 44% completion rate, but he is one of these guys who usually only needs one opportunity to put you away once he gets on top of you. When he is on the feet looking for takedowns, look for him to do a nice job of setting up his shot with strikes. He'll punch, he'll come forward and look for a double leg, often just driving his opponent into the cage, cutting off their ability to get their hips back, and then elevating their lower half and slamming them to the mat, or just scoring a takedown overall. Most of his takedowns that come along that cage, come along the wall, where his opponents are limited in where they can move. He does have a tendency at times, especially if he gets tired, to dive on takedown attempts and kind of come up short, but he'll just keep pushing forward and eventually look to grapple with his opponent, and he's not afraid to go to his back either if that situation presents itself. Once on the mat, he shows exceptionally tight body control, does a good job of riding his opponent and advancing towards submissions mixed in with ground and pound. He really likes that arm triangle if he gets on top, and look for him to attack. You can attack arms as well if that is a possibility. On the feet, the Brazilian's very aggressive. His strikes tend to be a little bit wild, but he's continually working to tighten that up, and he's been off for a bit, so I expect to see, further advancements there. He will come forward throwing hooks, still dangerous despite the fact that it's a secondary aspect of his attack, but he wants to get in close where he can set up his takedowns. Now, Tim Boetsch, his biggest weapon is that knockout power. 4 of his last 6 wins have come by knockout. The other 2 are very questionable split decisions, so you see how crucial it is for Timmy to get the knockout if he's going to win this fight. He has a relatively solid kicking arsenal, highlighted by a push kick to the midsection, which can both do damage and maintain separation, keep his opponent from coming forward. He throws a big overhand right, which is his big primary weapon at distance, and he can crack with guys. I picked him to upset Rafael Natal based on the fact he does do a decent job of nailing guys when they stand with him. He can land those strikes. While he uses the push kick to keep distance, probably some of his biggest weapons come once they're on the inside. He's a very dangerous close-range striker. He can clinch up, and he'll land shots over the top, come underneath with big uppercuts. He's knocked a couple guys out on the inside. So if you try and hang too long with him in that position, he can do some serious damage. Additionally, he has some pretty decent wrestling. He stopped Josh Saman on the mat. But again, in this fight, he will want to use it in reverse. Actually, when you look back at his record, he has had some issues with giving up takedowns. It hasn't been a big concern of late. We did see him get submitted by Talis Latis once he got the fight to the ground. But it's something that, we'll see if it's because he's become defensively better at defending takedowns, or because it just hasn't been a main focus of his opponents. The other thing with Boetsch is he's been very durable over his career, and that seems to be catching up with him. He's absorbed a lot of damage. Finished 7 times overall now, 4 times by knockout, 3 times by submission. You have to wonder, is that caught up to him to the point where, when guys hit him, he's in trouble. Or when guys get him on the mat, they can submit him, especially if they break him down a little bit on the feet. For Tim Boetsch to win this fight, he has to make it exceptionally dirty. Brawl, back Jacare up, keep coming forward, throw heavy leather, and just be willing to die on your sword, slamming home those big shots, looking to knock him out and force Jacare out of his comfort zone. It's kind of like a similar approach to the Talis Latis fight, but similar to the Talis Latis fight, I think Jacare is going to do what he does best, change levels, look for takedowns, drive Tim Boetsch to the mat. Jacare is very dangerous on the feet, but it's ultimately going to be his wrestling and his submission game, his BJJ, that carries this fight. I think he puts Boetsch down. He eventually goes to work, and my prediction is Jacare Souza to defeat Tim Boetsch by submission. Moving now to the co-main event of the evening, we see the return of the former middleweight champion, Anderson the Spider Silva, ranked 7th in the division, 33 wins, 8 losses, and 1 no contest. He's taking on the 8th-ranked fighter in the division, Derek Brunson, with a current record of 16 wins and 4 defeats. Now, Anderson Silva, as I said, he's returning. The last time we saw him was UFC 200, which was a short-notice defeat at the hands of Daniel Cormier, and we're talking, 24 hours probably, in that, 24, less than 48. He didn't have a lot of time to prepare for that fight. Maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was a little bit. I can't remember exactly. It was just ridiculous how little time. Basically, he got off the couch and fought the fight. And he lost, ultimately. He has winless over his last 5 matchups after the Nick Diaz fight was overturned to a no contest after a positive test on Silva's turn. He is getting up there in age. His legacy certainly is established. Is it becoming tarnished by this recent slump? I don't know. More appropriate opponent here? Quite possibly. Brunson had won 5 consecutive bouts prior to the Robert Whittaker debacle, which saw him get knocked out in the first round in that fight. Prior to that loss, he had knocked out 4 of his last 5 opponents, and this is a big-name opportunity for Brunson. If he beats Anderson Silva, he's right back in the mix and probably gets a high-profile fight next against a more relevant contender. Not saying Anderson Silva is not relevant. I'm just saying, guys who are right on the cusp of a title shot. Maybe, gets the winner of a Chris Weidman, Gegard Mousasi fight if that actually transpires. Physically, Silva 1 inch taller. They have the same 77-inch reach, and the Spider is 9 years older than his opponent. Looking at Brunson first, he is a BJJ purple belt and NCAA Division II wrestler, 8 wins by knockout, 4 submission victories as well, 4-1 on the scorecards, but he does have 3 losses by KO, losing to the aforementioned Jacare Souza, also Yoel Romero, and of course Robert Whittaker. When you look at his record, he's definitely trending in one direction as far as his fighting style, but he does have wins based on his wrestling. He had 8 takedowns in his decision victories over Lorenz Larkin and Chris Lieben. He actually landed 3 on Yoel Romero in a fight he was winning until he got finished late. He has gone a different direction in his other victories over guys like Sam Alvey, Ed Herman, and Uriah Hall. Basically, he has 2 modes. He's either grinding out decisions or he's knocking guys out with very aggressive striking-based attack, and that seems to be his current form of attack. When he fought when he took Ed Herman out, he landed a bunch of hard left to put him down. Similar against Alvey, he clinched up along the cage, bullied him in that position, eventually finished him. He showed Uriah Hall his left hand early, and Hall kind of reacted, and then boom, Brunson slammed it home for the finish in that fight as well. Very impressive overall, the way he puts guys down. If he doesn't land that clean shot from the outside, look for him to punch his way into the clinch, use that dirty boxing, uppercuts, and just swarm guys, and eventually look to land something flush that finishes them off. But, this is a big but, he does overextend himself when he's attacking. He overcommits. He leaves his chin out there. When he fought Sam Alvey, he was exceptionally wild. He was hurting him against the cage, and he finished him. But I always said he has this style that leaves him vulnerable, and Robert Whittaker exposed it. He tried to swarm and overwhelm Whittaker and put him on the defensive and finish him off. He couldn't get him out of there. He faded. He got hurt. He got finished all in the span of less than 5 minutes. That's a big question mark. Is that the approach he uses against Anderson Silva here? Now, Silva is a legend, but he is getting up there in age. He has slowed down a bit. Is he no longer able to do that style of those head games and those things that he does with guys where he shows them one thing and gets them thinking and then he does something else? He's willing to put drop his hands. Are those things he can no longer do and still be effective? We saw against Michael Bisping, he got outworked, allowing him to win a decision, even though a lot of people claimed he did and claimed he did get a knockout. But you know what I'm saying? Is he able to do that stuff at this age and this stage of his career? Nonetheless, he's still a very good striker, very dangerous striker. His leg kicks are brutal. His counter-striking is effectively accurate and can take guys out, uses their forward momentum. Interestingly enough, against a guy like Derek Brunson, that could be key. Uses their forward momentum to turn that, to really crank up the power. He's dangerous in the clinch. And overall, he forces opponents to hesitate and wait on him because they don't want to commit to something and get countered. They start second-guessing, and then Anderson's going to start letting his hands go. Silva, over his career, has been known for his chin, his ability to take damage, but he got knocked out by Chris Weidman when he was clowning him. Is that something as we go forward? We saw him get hurt a couple of times by Michael Bisping, and if Bisping can hurt you and over fights like that, Derek Brunson has a lot of horsepower as well. He certainly can hurt you as well. The biggest downfall of Silva, though, has been his defensive wrestling. We saw Dan Henderson exploit it. We saw Chael Sonnen exploit it. We saw Chris Weidman and Daniel Cormier, the last two being the most successful, also exploit his inability to stay vertical at times, put him on the mat, and beat him. Elect to go that route and take him down over 3 rounds and grind out a decision. That's certainly a possibility. How does Brunson coming back from his last fight affect him? Is he a smarter fighter? Is he going to be more conservative? Is he going to look for a more diversified attack using both his striking and his wrestling? Is he going to be looking for just a boring decision, or is he going to look to simply use his wrestling and look for that, use his striking and use that highlight KO of a legend like Anderson Silva to really propel himself into the next level of fighting? If Brunson rushes him, he could very well knock out Anderson Silva. That's certainly a possibility. But he could also suffer a similar fate that he did against Robert Whittaker, where he's unable to get him out of there, gasses out, and gets picked off by a technically superior striker. Whether the wrestling or striking-based attack is at the forefront of Derek Brunson, I don't think it's actually going to matter in this fight. I think Silva's going to endure the early onslaught. He's going to be able to avoid... Brunson, I think, is going to be less aggressive with his striking, but I think he's still going to come forward. I think Anderson Silva's going to avoid that early onslaught. He'll defend some takedowns, might even get up, but I think Brunson was going to slow down in this matchup. Anderson Silva seems to have that aura about him still, especially against a younger fighter, that if you make a mistake, you have to be letter perfect. If you make a mistake, he's going to finish you. I think ultimately Brunson's going to make one of those mistakes, probably from being over-aggressive. That counter-striking of Anderson Silva is going to catch him coming forward, and my prediction is Anderson Silva to defeat Derek Brunson by knockout. Moving now to the main event of the evening, we will be crowning a new UFC champion. The first ever women's featherweight champion in the UFC will be crowned as the former bantamweight champion. Holm, also known as the Preacher's Daughter, 10 wins and 2 losses, takes on the Iron Lady, Germain de Randamie of the Netherlands, with a current record of 6 wins and 3 losses. Now, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this fight, maybe not as much as you'd think, but still, the fact that we are crowning a 145-pound champion in a fight that does not involve Cyborg is certainly an issue. People are saying, yes, until you beat Cyborg at 145 pounds, you are not the best 145-pound female fighter on the planet. I would think, and I'm guessing the UFC is looking at this going, we're going to crown a champion, maybe we'll establish her, maybe whoever wins this fight picks up a couple victories, and then boom, we slot Cyborg in there for a huge fight to, again, bring hype to this division before Cyborg comes in and starts smashing everybody, if that happens to be the case. When you look at these two fighters, Holly Holm's coming into this title fight off back-to-back losses to Valentina Shevchenko. She is 0-2 since winning the Ronda Rousey fight, so that fight certainly a high mark in her career. It's been nothing but downhill since. de Randamie has won 2 fights in a row, 1-1 at featherweight when she fought back in Strikeforce, 3-1 in the UFC overall. For Holly Holm, when you look at her pre-mixed martial arts combat, 33-2-3 as a boxer, very impressive. de Randamie was an undefeated Muay Thai champion, so we have 2 exceptionally talented female strikers going toe-to-toe in this matchup. For de Randamie, she's actually 1 inch taller than Holm. She'll have a 2-inch reach advantage, and she is the younger fighter by 3 years. So all 3 of those main physical categories favoring her. For Holm, she manages her distance very well. That's one of the things that makes her very effective. She uses her kicking game to both attack her opponent and defend their ability to close the gap and let their offense go. her kicking, and arguably, I'd say no doubt, is her better form of offense or better form of attack. She'll use a push kick to create distance. She works at a very nice oblique kick, which is common coming out of the Jackson camp. It seems like sometimes, though, they are used mainly to create distance, and we don't see enough meant to inflict damage and to do damage. But those head kicks are lethal. She has several knockouts related to her kicks. She has a couple leg kick TKOs, a couple body kick TKOs. I think she has 3 head kick TKOs, including the Ronda Rousey stoppage. You know, when she fought Miesha Tate, she kept Tate on the outside. Tate's not a great striker, but she's still, you know, serviceable. She kept Tate on the outside. She landed strikes. She avoided that distance being closed, ultimately until she lost the fight in the 5th round. When she fought Shevchenko, she hurt her very early in that matchup, but she had issues closing the distance as the fight progressed. She was routinely coming up short with her strikes, and almost to the point where she almost looked scared or unwilling to step into the fire and get hit. And she kind of recaptured that late in the fight where I'm going to get hit. If I'm going to land, I've got to. But she was out of her element for the most part. She wasn't nearly active enough in the majority of that matchup. She was outlanded 87-54. After winning the first round, she had the better of the striking exchange in the opening round, won that round. And I picked Holm in that matchup and lost a lot of money as a result, unfortunately. She had issues, though, in that fight with an opponent that was pushing the pace and in her face. And we saw that before the Raquel Pennington fight, which actually went to split decision. Pennington came forward, walked her down, and got in her face, and that was a very effective way for her to fight Holly Holm. Looking at Germain de Randamie, she's a classic Dutch Muay Thai trained fighter. She's exceptionally strong in the clinch. That's a nice avenue she has to control her opponents, to work that Thai clinch and land some brutal knees to the body and head and put them down. At distance, she has a very strong right hand. She'll work in uppercuts. Overall, she throws a lot of stuff with power. She has good kicks, really chops into her opponent's midsection and legs, and she's defensively right jab, and she'll slip off to the side while tossing out a right hook, which is, makes her very difficult to deal with, as she's not in the same place you last saw her when she's throwing that offense. When there is no threat of a takedown, de Randamie is able to load up her power, and that is crucial to her success. If she knows she's not going to get countered with a takedown, she can really let her hands go. When she took out one of her previous opponents, she landed a couple of big right hands. She scored standing knockouts in a couple of fights simply because she put so much, abuse on her foe. The referee is forced to step in and stop the fight. Lots of feints and fakes to draw out her opponent's attack, and that's very effective as well. When Holly Holm fought Shevchenko after the first round, she seemed almost one-dimensional. If she is unable to use her kicks to keep you at distance and then do damage with them as well, or at least pose some offensive threat, she's not nearly the same fighter. If you break down her defense, she is vulnerable. She doesn't carry that pace that can get her back into a fight. And that's something you have to be concerned. She doesn't know where to go from there if she doesn't have that at her disposal. For Germain de Randamie, her biggest issues have been with Holly Holm does not offer a takedown game. And maybe Jackson will recognize that and go with that wrinkle in her game to really throw things off. But I don't know. Without takedowns, as I said, Germain de Randamie can really open up her offense. She can be aggressive with her output, and she can sit down on her punches and land with power, and I think that's crucial here. I think Holm is going to struggle tremendously to keep Germain backed off and not, coming forward, getting inside kicking range and letting those hands go. I think she's going to become discouraged with the damage that Germain de Randamie is able to pile up on her. I wouldn't be surprised to see Germain have success in the clinch. Like, Holly Holm's very strong, but Germain gets on the inside. She is very strong as well. I think both girls are going to benefit tremendously from not having cut down to 135 pounds. But I think it's going to favor de Randamie that much more. She's a little bit younger. She's at a better stage in her career. She's got momentum on her side. I think those last two fights certainly, especially the last fight, has Holly Holm, concerned. And when you think of it this way, Holly Holm has been beaten in striking-based fights before. Shevchenko did it. She's lost a couple boxing matchups. Germain de Randamie has never lost any type of striking-based contest. If you stand with her, you are in trouble. And it's going to be an excellent fight. I'm very much looking forward to it. And my prediction is Germain de Randamie to defeat Holly Holm by TKO. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 208. All of my preliminary predictions, as always, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You certainly can check them out. Also vote on the different fights to see who you think is going to emerge victorious. My bet packs will be available for $15, which gives you all the information for every single fight that I can possibly come up with, props, fantasy analysis, you name it, I'll put it in there. If there's something that's not there that you'd like to hear, or like to talk to me about, or have a question about, by all means, contact me via the contact page on my website. You can contact me via Facebook or on Twitter. I'm always, listening and firing back and answering questions. Either way, I do my best to respond as quickly as possible. I also, my Twitter handle is KO_predictions. I try and live tweet as much as I possibly can during the events, but sometimes that's difficult because having a young family, there's a lot of things that go on at that time period when at least the events first kick off. And so it can be difficult to follow along. Plus, I'm preparing for the next fight. When you have these back-to-back shows, you have to take advantage of the time you have. This is just a hobby of mine, and obviously, so it comes secondary to my actual career, as I've stated on multiple occasions. Nonetheless, I have a fairly sizable following. I appreciate everybody who tunes in, listens to my shows, and as always is the case, even if you downvote my videos, I appreciate the fact that you're at least watching them. And thanks, as always, for everyone who tuned in. Take care, guys. See you later.